Have a look at Andreas Munzer. He was one of the most shredded, if not the most peeled bodybuilder of all time. He competed in the 90's. It was the decade of peeled, ripped mass monsters, for sure. And I can hear you guys now at home.
But Mark's Max Muscle,
You doubting Thomases.
Mark's Max Muscle, there is no way they were more shredded back then. We have technology.
Humans can only withstand so much. And the sad part is, these guys were dying for their sport. Andreas Munzer, he passed away just shortly after a competition. Due to that just unbelievable physique, he really pushed the limits. So I think absolutely these guys from the 90's were more shredded than they are nowadays. But was Andreas the most shredded bodybuilder from the 90's? There was Momo Benaziza. He even competed in the 80's. But in the 90's, he was even bigger, and was he as conditioned as Andreas? I don't think so. I think he was a whole lot more muscle-bound, perhaps. But in terms of straight-up condition, I think Andreas had Momo beat. What about Dorian Yates? I'm sure you Dorianites are all claiming that he was the most conditioned bodybuilder of the 90's. And we're not really counting the, 98, 99. Know what I'm saying? No Coleman in this category. We're talking straight up 90's. Was Dorian the most conditioned? I don't think so. He sure brought a lot of mass with very good condition, but I think it's a closed contest. It's between Andreas Munzer and this specimen. Take a look, if you will, at Hamdullah Aykutlu. And for you doubting Thomases, you guys are not doubting anymore. You're looking at this condition, this raw bone. This is unbelievable. Sure, there's not the mass of today, but nobody's this conditioned, guys. I don't think. So the comparison we are looking at today is Andreas Munzer versus Hamdullah Aykutlu, and that is the gentleman that belonged to that glute setup and Christmas tree area. Now you can see right out of the chute, Andreas is in another level as far as leg size, muscle size, things of that nature. But for this video, we're really focusing in on the condition itself. So without further ado, I apologize. Let us go to the front double bicep pose. And it is definitely obvious. Leg size. I mean, I'll get this right out of the way at the start. Andreas Munzer was a superior bodybuilder. His placings reflected that at the Olympia as well. But like I said, we're focusing in on condition. You can see neither one of these guys had what you call like a Sean Ray or Lee Priest type ab setup. But the actual condition, look at the obliques. Not an ounce of fat. And I mean an ounce. But when you're this depleted, this raw, you're not going to have that pop, that wow. One thing that does have a lot of pop, zest, if you will, is the quad development of Andreas Munzer. As peeled as this guy would get, those legs remained huge. They were maybe the best quads of his decade, including your Paul Dillettes, things of that nature. I mean, the guy was just shredded to the diced. So in terms of condition itself, I'm kind of leaning towards Andreas because of those quads. Here's the front lat spread. And this is a later on version of Hamdullah. The guy was shredded to the diced. And a lot of these guys, like I mentioned, they died for their sport. But on the contrary, Hamdullah, he competed for a while. He stayed fresh. He stayed good. He didn't pack on that extra mass. So, I'm not saying he was natural by any stretch of the imagination, but the guy definitely did a lot of things right. And he was still one of the most shredded guys out there, perhaps the most. Both these guys representing in the front lat spread. Here to tell you. Turn to the side here and see what we can tell here with condition. I'd have to go with Hamdullah. Look at the far pack. Look at the obliques. The arm size of Andreas. He had a big old bicep. So if it's a muscle competition, I mean, it's lights out. Andreas Munzer. He is the more muscular of the two. But condition-wise, the obliques, the little finery details. It is worth to mention, though, both of these guys just shredded to the diced. Now, here's the side tricep pose. Not a very fair pose for Hamdullah Aykutlu. Is it Amdullah? Is it a silent H? I feel that that H should not be silenced anymore. But Andreas Munzer, when you're talking how shredded this guy was, the body fat percentage, I mean, nobody matched this hoo-ha pose. This is not much of a side tricep per se, but it is what he used, and the judges accepted it. Look at the delt. Look at the tricep meat itself. Just as thin-skinned and glaciers. Look at the far pec. Wow. Wow. So condition for condition, yeah, Andreas has Hamdullah Aykutlu beat. So I think Andreas was the most conditioned bodybuilder. Turn around. Oh, no. I take it back. I take it all back. Munzer, he is winning on the back development. The lats, you got a wider set of lats, big traps, nice, thick, full. And the guy is shredded to the diced. We know that. Take a look at some close-up pictures if you can find them. And the guy had no body fat whatsoever. But I think they even somehow sucked out more body fat out of Hamdullah. His back. The Christmas tree and the glutes look like an alien creature of some kind. So, who had the more body fat? I guess Andreas Munzer from the front. He looked more shredded, but from the back, you can clearly see, guys. This guy's more shredded than Dorian Yates, more shredded than anybody. Now, here's the rear double. And another example of the dominance of Andreas Munzer. And if you were lucky enough to remember watching these old Olympias or any events that Andreas competed in, his back, you really had to see the video footage. The pictures really do this back no justice. It was just rippled and there was veins everywhere. Glutes, hey, he is as peeled. This isn't an Olympia, by the way. This is another event, I believe, for Andreas. I think he was at his peak condition. Now, Hamdullah, look at the hamstrings and the glutes. Perfect condition. If you want to be able to dial yourself in for a competition, imagine if you were this guy's coach or whatever, your teammate, friend, things of that nature. Oh, are you in condition? Are you dialed in for the competition? Well, take a look at these glutes. Yeah, I think so. Of course, Munzer's no softy. That's for darn sure. Here's the abs and thigh. And yeah, Aykutlu more shredded in the midsection. So he's got him in the back. He's got him in certain shots from the front here. When you look at the quads, Andreas, even the size, or even the condition, obviously the size, I should say. He's going to have bigger legs, but they are more shredded. He has those ripples, which, yeah, we get excited about that. It's more of a genetic thing. I mean, yeah, you got to bring it out with the condition. But still, if Hamdullah, I think if he had those ridges, they'd show up just as much. So at the end of the day, Aykutlu, he does have a couple of things on Andreas. Better set of abs, for sure. Maybe a better V-taper, overall shape, but I think that's all contributed to the midsection. But other than that, Mooney, he's just too much of a muscle-bound creature for Hamdullah Aykutlu to take out in an actual bodybuilding competition. But if you are wondering who was the more conditioned man, oh, I love this picture of Andreas. I think it's from an Arnold Classic, if I'm not mistaken. Just as shredded as you could even imagine. Look at this guy. Wow. But all the shots considered, I think Aykutlu was a little bit more shredded. So who was the most shredded bodybuilder from the 1990s? I would say Aykutlu. He's just that much more conditioned from behind. I just don't get it. How he could be that peeled. Of course, though, guys, he would lose against modern-day competitors. He's just too lean, too thin. They'd put him in the classic physique, and they'd tell him put on some weight in that division, too. Hit thumbs up on the video. Love Andreas Munzer. Wish he was still around so he could see the difference that he made, with the fans. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. Shredded. Mr. Shredded. Aykutlu, Mr. Shredded ×2. Have a great one, guys.